Next up, we got Samuel. I think is their third presentation. We need like a passport stamper or something. Like. And we're going to be hearing about his work on the QGIS plugin for Arches, which he presented last time in Los Angeles. He's been working on it. I've seen some updates. It looks really awesome. So we're really glad to have him working on this.
But you're delighted to hear from me again. Right. Something else. Okay, this one is a lightning presentation, even though it says it's half an hour long. It definitely isn't. I didn't want to rehash what I presented in LA because ultimately the functionality is essentially the same. No one wants to see me logging into a plugin, creating a resource, editing a resource, everything over and over again. Yeah, that's not changed. That's the core functionality. I just wanted to provide some updates. This is the same slide from that presentation, and probably other ones that I've done too. Everyone in this room knows what a GIS is. I'm not even going to bother reading it, but if you don't, yeah. It's a piece of software that you can use to play with maps, you can analyze, you can edit, you can do whatever you like. QGIS is obviously, well, I'm getting ahead of myself, but QGIS is open source, it's free. There's well, let's skip on for this because everyone knows that. So yeah, there's an Esri plugin for Arches, or an Arches plugin for Esri. Obviously, Arc Pro is a licensed software. It's not free. It works pretty well. We've got customers using this, but Arches is obviously open source, and so is QGIS. So it makes a lot of sense. Why would we not want to be pushing people towards using QGIS? It's just logical. They've both got the same license. They're both projects that you can go on the GitHub repo and you can complain about it. You can help towards it by making PRs, that sort of stuff. So yeah, it makes a hell of a lot of sense. So as this is a dev conference, people may be interested. So I've been developing this plugin for QGIS 3.30. I couldn't tell you what the version is now, but I feel like it's 3.4 something. I'm fairly certain the plugin does still work for it. The framework for the front end is using PyQt, which is it's like a Python binding for the C++ framework, which is Qt. It uses Qt5. QGIS now tells me when I boot it up that it'll be using Qt6 soon when QGIS 4 comes out. So that's just something for me to consider at some point. Creating the UI, you've got a nice little interface called Qt Creator. So yeah, this is without all the Arches stylings because by default it does look a bit ugly. This was something that I kind of spoke about at the LA one, that by default the plugin uses the QGIS stylings, but to make it feel a bit more Archesy and a bit cooler, we did some UI improvements to implement style sheets. So a brief history. It's been going since about September 2023. Me and Phil had some conversations about it back when I was in Belfast, actually. Just sort of throwing ideas back and forth, seeing if it was actually possible. And then, yeah, on a train, I just started looking into it. And yeah, decided to present it at the last developer conference. Since then, we've moved the code, because it did live on a repo in the k.in.org. It's now on Arches project, so you can go on there, you can clone it, you can try and install it, and you can tell me it's bad. But one of the big things was that because it was sort of a playing around, seeing how possible it was, the initial code was just everything in one big file. So it needed a major restructure, which it obviously now has. We released the alpha version, which is on the QGIS experimental plugins repo in November as well. That was very cool. And then, yeah, alpha 1.0.1a is going to be released soon, just because it may be slightly broken. So what does it do? Pretty much exactly the same as what the Esri one does at the moment, because we wanted to model it so that it was a QGIS version of that, and then we could go above and beyond keep adding new stuff. So yeah, it allows you to connect to Arches via the API. You log in, it gets your OAuth token, client ID, grabs your graphs, all that good stuff. And then yeah, you can use it to create new geometry, new resources with geometries from QGIS. We've implemented spatial views because again, it's modelled off the Esri one or the Historic England Esri one. So that's how we can get resources into QGIS, and then they sort of get registered there. It's aware that it's an Arches resource. It connects again via the API to replace or append. So yeah, that's its core functionality. Like I mentioned, it's now got a nice little structure to it rather than just one big file. So we've got core, and within the Arches directory, we've got at the moment just connection and stuff to do with the resources. We've got utils, which obviously no one really cares about that. And then in the views, that's all the actual front end stuff that links to PyQt. What else did we do? Yeah, well, since then, we've improved the UI a little bit. The thing is, I can't really remember what it looked like in LA because it was every week it was changing. So I think the style sheets were kind of there, but I can't remember. And then the big thing was that you can use whatever CRS you want in QGIS, and it'll recognize it. It'll change it to lat long so that it's Arches compatible, which was kind of a big thing. So yeah, this is what I was talking about. So anyone who wants to play with it can do that. Although I will now backpedal slightly and say it may be broken. So maybe play with it next week or even tomorrow, depending on when I get the next alpha release out. But yeah, let's pretend it does work. Yeah. Also, it's got two 5-star ratings. And they weren't me.
They weren't as either.
So yeah, you don't need to clone it from GitHub anymore, even though, like I said, you might want to at the moment. We've got a dev branch, which is where all the active development goes into. But if you want to install it via QGIS, then you go into your plugins, you click Show Experimental Plugins, and then you search Arches, and it's there, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool to see. And then there's the actual QGIS interface for the plugin shows me some interesting stats. I don't know how true any of this actually is. I feel like it's a lot of scraping and stuff, but you know, apparently, yeah, the OS has the most downloads, and then 13 more rows. So the UI currently looks like this. So this is what I've been working on most recently, just to make it look nicer. So we've got sort of the Arches nav bar style on the left. I think the idea is that if you're someone whose work entirely revolves around QGIS, and you don't really want to interact with Arches, you just want to stay in QGIS, then this can be your home essentially. So you can log into Arches. You've got a little user profile page that, again, it's very bare bones, like you can see, but it might be nice to include some more information about the user. And there needs to be a little refresh button so that it can grab changes from Arches, like if you've made a new graph. Obviously, once you've logged in, that's old, but yeah. These two pages, obviously, using the slightly older UI, there's a lot of boxes, which is a bit grim, but yeah, it's essentially there, so you can create resources, you can click existing resources within the spatial view, and they show up in this table, which again will probably be replaced at some point with a nice image of the geometry or something. You may also be able to see that to upload features, you have to click a drop-down of an existing layer. Now I'm going to mention that probably in the next slide, but that's getting worked on at the moment so that you can just click on the map. So I don't know why it was always like that. It's just happened to be. So yeah, that last one. So you can select geometries from the map. You don't have to upload the entire layer, which is obviously not ideal. I spoke about the second one. The top one is something that I've really been trying to look into, especially since the alpha version potentially broke. The plugin desperately needs testing, and the repo does have, well, you can test plugins in just like the PyQt or all the QGIS plugins that you've got. The only thing is testing the connection to Arches could be slightly trivial. I'm still kind of umming and ahhing it. We spoke about sort of mocking data, which makes sense for the uploading, but you can't really test a connection really to that, which it's not great. So we could either get whoever needs to test it to have Arches running, and then just say you need to be using this version of Arches at least. But yeah, that's still something I'm considering. Yeah, that's it. That was my lightning presentation. If anyone has any questions, feel free.
Yeah, thanks, Samuel. That's so cool. And just to bring up this question again that we sort of discussed a little bit earlier is one of the tricky things about moving data from Arches into a system like QGIS is that if you have a lot of nested graph shapes, then how do you handle that? And right now the GeoJSON endpoint will send GeoJSON data to QGIS pretty reliably, but of course the data gets truncated and lost depending on the graph shapes and whatnot. And so this is sort of a question basically if anybody has sort of any ideas about how to retain your data integrity, your data structures, and all of your nested data sets and values when you're moving into attribute tables in QGIS. It would be amazing. One idea conceptually that came to mind is something to do with the tile Excel export, which preserves all of that in a kind of relational format that could, in theory, be mapped onto attribute tables. But I don't know if something like that is possible to write into your QGIS plugin.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke earlier about the fact that this can only do geometries at the moment, but especially from looking at Namjoon's presentation as well as Owen's, I think expanding this so that you can create everything within QGIS. Obviously, this is still very theoretical. I have no idea how I'd really go about it. Whether it would be workflows or whether you would just say, fetch the graph and then a form per node or node group or somehow. I mean, it obviously needs a lot more thought than right here, but yeah, and on the GeoJSON endpoint bit, I think there is a issue on the GitHub to say that I would quite like to implement that, so you don't necessarily need to load in entire spatial views. If you've only got a few resources you want to target with the plugin, then you could just ping in that endpoint or the endpoint and then just edit those. It still needs playing around with, but it would definitely make it a lot more accessible.
Awesome, thank you.
Why did I even move?
I don't know. Slightly, I don't know if this is a sensible question, but it's a very providery question. But just out of curiosity, and question for you, but also maybe for others in the room as well. I know that there's a lot of people using QGIS, commercially often generally coming across ArcGIS, but there are also commercial applications, as we all know. QGIS, I mean, what do you feel the temperature of commercial demand for it is? Is that something people are seeing in general, or just curious?
We do hear a lot of people saying, when's the QGIS plugin going to be ready? Yeah.
Well, we take it for a test drive. Our client's like ready to go. And it's, I think it's nice because, I like the Esri product, but, it's better because it's open source. So if you're going to go with an open source stack, I think it's a good solution. We're strictly looking at it for, the client came to us saying, I want a fully functioning GIS system. And that's not Arches. It's not meant to be that.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a round peg, square hole, whatever. So this is perfect because you can do that GIS functionality and then use Arches to manage the applicant data. So we're really excited about it. And we're going to test it.
Please do. Yeah, I mean, to be transparent, it's been without funding for, I mean, most of its development. So it's been when we can, because we really like this. I mean, it's so fun to have there to play with, to develop. It's really cool. But if there's priority, yeah, it falls down the list, which is a shame. But yeah, I think going forward, we're really going to be developing it a lot more.
I was just going to chime in. My colleague at City of Los Angeles Office of Historic Resources, Sarah, is one of those downloads. It's not, I mean, what's
Maybe she did the 5-star rating.
honestly, I think I did. Because I'm like, yeah, this needs visibility, you know? Like, yes, check it out. No, but yeah, I mean, there's absolutely commercial use cases. Like, they're like, yeah, we have Esri, but we, you know, for her, she's like, I'd rather just use this and plug it directly into Arches. If it can be customized even further to work with Arches better, then let's go with that.
I guess my new question is that if there's commercial demand, then it would be great to actually get budget to do that.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, see, that's your problem, but
yeah.
but at the same time, I think as a community, it would be good to see a way of doing that sustainably.
Yeah, well, we need to get people off Arc Pro and get them on to QGIS.
It's a big lift.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Esri fast, you know, every dollar that you would have spent on Esri, now like.
Well, that's it. Yeah. And yeah, the reason that the released version was broken was something to do with the QGIS task manager. To go into it slightly, it was 100% working when we released it. I tested it a few weeks ago and then it just wasn't, and I'd seen the issue that you posted. So I don't know whether QGIS did something in the background that broke it or if it's just being temperamental, but that has now been fixed. It just needs to be released.
What really needs to be done to get to 1.0?
Good question. I think simply getting them looking like them, which is pretty easy. Refresh tokens, which also I don't think is very hard. I had something else that I was going to say, but I can't remember what it was. I think that might just be it. Because we would like to release it imminently, is the wrong word, but as soon as possible, really.
And you mentioned spatial views, so that's how you get data in. Are there any plans to support, services? Because, yeah.
I think there should be. I'd be interested in what people would like it to connect to, whether spatial views is easy for some. Like I said, we only did it because it's what we did for the Esri one, or what Andy and you guys did for the Esri one, and what we do for people using it. But if there's easier alternatives or better ways, or just the ability to support multiple ways, I guess.
Yeah.
When you say spatial views, it's direct connect to Postgres or
Yeah.
OGC?
The only thing is, as long as it has the right structure, it can be served anyway, as long as it's a layout. Certainly in Esri, it doesn't have to be a spatial view, as long as it's served with the right fields, then that's all it's looking for.
Yeah.
Theory, yes.
All right, any more questions?
I do want to say a huge thank you to Cyrus, who's been helping a lot with the plugin, just for random PRs and stuff. So. Next one. Who's next?
Thank you, Samuel.